Okay, so we want to see the various test method or a few test method that we can. So on conductors, that is cable, remember it is either between if it is a single core cable as you have here, okay, it is to be between the conductor and the body, okay, or you can use the armoring, okay, of if it's an armored cable, okay, or the shield as your second conductor, or you place it on your second probe on the body of that is the armoring cover, that rubber part, okay, around that is what you are seeing on the screen now. So you can place it there between there and the conductor, and then you inject, you get your resistance reading, okay. So what we have just described is the spot reading test. That is, you inject and take a single reading from your equipment, okay, either between line to line, line and ground, face to ground or face to face, okay, on your equipment. So you take just one reading. Remember, we said for you to take this spot reading, you allow, after injection, you allow 60 seconds to pass. So like we have here, once you connect here to line 1 and here to line 2, assuming you want to test the insulation between both faces, between line 1 and line 2, or between phase A and phase B. Okay, after making the connection, press this test button, and then you allow 60 seconds to elapse before you record your reading. So that is the first one, okay, type of resistance test method. Then the other one is time resistance test. Under the time resistance test, we have two basic test methods. We have the dielectric absorption ratio test, and then we have the polarization index test. Okay, so both of them, they are kind of a step further of spot reading. So the dielectric absorption ratio test is like as the name implies, a ratio test. Okay, so you take the reading of that is the insulation reading of the equipment, of where whatever the insulation that you are testing, you take the reading at 1 minute and divide it with the reading of 30 seconds or 20 seconds, as the case may be, depends on what your facility actually approves. But either of them will give you the good result. Okay, so which means that you will take, as you are injecting the test voltage, the insulation resistance reading at 30 seconds or 20 seconds, you record it. Then the insulation resistance reading at 60 seconds, you record it, and then you divide that of 60 seconds with that of 30 seconds. So from what we described earlier, okay, you will see that the insulation resistance reading expectedly at 60 seconds is supposed to be higher than the insulation resistance reading at 20 seconds or 30 seconds. So the ratio should be more than 1, okay, for a good insulation. Okay, the higher the better, but if it is less than 1, that is a sign that we have problem. Okay, so we also have the polarization index test. The polarization index test is like the electric absorption ratio test, but in this case, you are taking the insulation reading at 1 minute, that is 60 seconds, and then the insulation reading at 10 minutes. Okay, so you now divide the IRO, the insulation resistance reading at 10 minutes with the insulation resistance reading at 1 minute. So expectedly, again, the insulation resistance reading at 10 minutes is expected to be higher than the insulation resistance reading at 1 minute. So the ratio should be more than 1. Again, the higher, better. Okay, so for low voltage equipment, anything beyond 1, between 1.2 and 1.5, is acceptable. But on high voltage equipment, we expect it to be more than 2, okay, if possible. High or medium voltage equipment. So the third test method is the step voltage test, okay, where we vary the magnitude of voltage that is injected. We increase the voltage. Maybe for the first reading, we injected 200 volts or 100 volts. The second reading, we inject like 500 volts, 5 times the initial one. Then the third reading, we inject 2500 volts, okay? And we may also go further as the case may be, okay? So we may also vary, but we are just looking at, we just want to figure out a trend in our resistance, insulation resistance reading. We can use 100, 200, 300, 500, okay, or 100, 300, 500, 1000, 2500, and 5000, as the case may be. Are we getting it? So we are just looking at, we just want to see a pattern, but conventionally we use the step is always 5 times the initial voltage injected. So if you inject 100, go to 500, inject 500, you go to 2500. Okay, we'll see all of these later as we go ahead. So for the spot reading, as you can see on this electric motor, this is insulation tester. Okay, I haven't connected your probe appropriately. You place one of the test probe on the one of the terminals. Okay, I haven't opened the terminal of the motor, and then the other on the frame. So you are testing the insulation resistance between this phase, if it is the U phase or V phase, between this phase and ground. Are you getting it? That is what you are testing. So remember, as you press the test button, you allow 60 seconds to pass before you take your reading. So when you do it like that, you have an accurate spot insulation resistance test reading. So such spot reading, you can trend it. So each time you go to do your test, depends on your test interval. If it is every month, every quarter, every year, as the case may be, okay? But usually most facilities, they run their own every month. Okay, so when you go out, you take the insulation resistance reading and plot it. Okay, so when trends are developing, as we saw earlier, you will see the trend that there is deterioration in insulation. Okay, before you get to the point of failure like this, you have seen it and do whatever you can to restore it back to what is normal. And then during your routine test too, you will still know, as you can see on the right part of the graph, you still know if the equipment is still functioning properly or the insulation resistance reading is okay. So the time test, like we said, we have the dielectric absorption ratio test and we have the polarization index test. Okay, so you simply take the reading at 20 or 30 seconds and at 1 minute, and then divide for the dielectric absorption ratio test. Okay, and then for the polarization index, you take at 1 minute and then you also take at 10 minutes. Okay, and then you divide the 10 minutes reading with the 1 minute reading. Okay, so here you can see your time test. So as you can see on the graph, this is your reading at 1 minute. You see that as the time is increasing until you get to 10 minutes, the insulation resistance in megaohms is also increasing. So this is what you expect to have the insulation resistance at 10 minutes is supposed to be higher. But once you have problem within the insulation, maybe you have moisture or dirt that will not be ordinarily shown in your spot reading when you take the IR reading just once, okay? It will become clear here, because after some time, you will not see that marked difference. You see, though the insulation is high, here could be high, acceptable, here could have an acceptable value, and here is an acceptable value, okay? But what is expected is that as the time of injection increases, the insulation resistance is supposed to increase. But here is not increasing. So here you may have a ratio of 1 or 1 point something, which is low. So that shows that maybe moisture or dirt has been trapped within the winding or within the insulation itself, that is compromising the insulation resistance, or that may eventually, okay, cause the insulation resistance to deteriorate. So this shows the beauty of this time resistance test as to the spot reading tests. The types of time resistance tests, like we said before, we have the dielectric absorption ratio test, DARO, resistance, the IR reading at 1 minute over the IR reading at 30 seconds, as you can see on your screen. Then the polarization index test, the IR reading at 10 minutes divided by the IR reading at 1 minute. So here are some of what is expected or how to interpret the result. So anything less than 1 is a no-no. It's not acceptable at all. That's dangerous to the life of the equipment and also to personnel that will be working around. That is the safety of personnel that will be working around such. So if it is between 1 and 1.2, like I said, if it is low voltage equipment, well, it could be acceptable, depends on the level of insulation IR value, okay, on your spot, each of the spot reading. Okay, so it is questionable. Are you getting there? For polarization index between 1 and 2, it's also questionable, but for low voltage equipment, it could be acceptable. But for medium and high voltage equipment, you expect it to be very high. Are you getting it? So anything from 1.4 and above, 1.6 and above for the DARO test is okay. Then between 2 and 4 for the polarization PI test is also okay. So you will be very confident of the installation when you have above 1.6 or 2 for your DARO test. That is the electrical absorption test. And if you have above 4, that means the installation is superb, okay, for your polarization index test. So here we have the IR test of a conductor that is conducted on an electric motor. Okay, so for a good insulation, this is the trend that you are supposed to have. Okay, for your first 10 minutes, see the increase like what we described before. Then when you have something like this, even though the insulation resistance reading is acceptable, you see that something is definitely wrong with the insulation. Probably moisture has been trapped or dirt has been trapped within that insulation. So on the step voltage test, like we said earlier, to increase the voltage in steps, okay, that you inject into the system. But like we said, you do it in increments of 5 times the original test voltage. So as you can see here, if you inject 100 volts for 60 seconds, the next test voltage will be 500 volts for another 60 seconds, and then 2500 volts for another 60 seconds. Assuming you are testing any of the windings, maybe secondary windings to ground, as you have here now. Okay, secondary winding to ground. You carry out the test in these steps. So as you increase it, you inject, you increase it, you inject, and take your readings. So expectedly in the IR reading, you are not supposed to have more than 25% difference between the IR reading at 100 volts and the IR reading at 500 volts, okay, and also the IR reading at 2005, between 500 and 2500. So once you have that marked difference, okay, in the IR reading, okay, maybe expectedly as you are increasing the voltage, it drops, okay, but once the difference, if it drops more than that 25%, of course, you will know that there is a problem developing already, okay. So here are some of the examples. Of course, this is a very good reading, and this is an insulation that is already failing if you plot the two on the graph, as you can see.